Hey guys, VaulSC here, hope that you're doing well. In this video I'm just going to be going over some of the changes that Parabellum announced for Conquest the Last Argument of Kings, not just in the recent happy hour, but just in general, some of the little bit of tidbits and rumors that have been coming out recently for the rumored big update that's coming up very, very soon. I'm not going to cover everything. I'm not going to go into every single detail. I would advise you guys to rewatch the happy hour video, which they have posted, if you want to get every little piece of information and every image of upcoming regiments that are announced. What I'm primarily going to do is just give you my opinions on where they're going with the game and just my notes on some of the more interesting and robust kind of changes that are happening. Generally, the takeaway is the same, that Conquest is a very good game because it's supported reasonably well by Parabellum. In the past, my main issue that I've always taken with other game companies like Corvus Belli and Privateer Press and, of course, Games Workshop is that they are updating their games a little bit too slowly for people who really enjoy playing competitively on tabletop. And when they do get to the updates, they don't really fix enough or really make sensible changes. But Parabellum is better in that regard. They're not perfect. I'll be very critical of them in this video in some places, but for the most part, you know, they do a good job in taking care of the problems. You know, they're not sort of just putting some update out that has nothing to do with what we're asking for as a community, and that's something I really appreciate, and one of the main reasons why I play this game. I was disappointed that it took them so long this year. We went for maybe 6 to 9 months with no real changes, and that was annoying to me because you have the frustration of continually playing against the most powerful things that Old Dominion and Wadroon can do, and that kind of took the fun out of the game for a while for me. I kind of slowed down my purchase of miniatures and my the games that I played with my friends, so that was disappointing. I felt like they could have spread it out a bit more and given us, you know, a few hot fixes here and there. That would have done a lot for me personally, but I don't want to complain too much. They have come out with a really good number of changes. Just to give you a bit of an overview of for each faction, what they're going to be doing is they're going to be updating Wadroon and nords specifically in the coming week, and we have a PDF already showing us what that's going to look like. But they did briefly say a few things about some of the other factions. Notably, with 100 Kingdoms, they are going to be dropping the points costs of Ashen Dawn, I think by 10 points, and reducing their attacks by 1. That is exactly the change that I recommended, so maybe they were watching my previous video on this topic, who knows, but it's the right thing to do. Ashen Dawn really are a unit that you don't want to fix by just making them impossible to pay for. What you want to do is address the problem, and that's the fact that they're too good at attacking and defending. By reducing their attacks, you lower the damage output but still keep the really good defensive capability, and to make up for that, the points decrease makes sense. They're also preventing you from adding additional stands, so you can't go up to 2 units of 5, which, to be fair, the only problem with it is that it's just difficult for some factions to beat, and it makes the game a bit too matchup dependent. If you come along with the wrong army list, you're not going to beat that list. When we saw that list played at the Hios Greek Worlds event, it obviously didn't come first or even place top 3, but that's not the point. You know, the problem is the experience that most players are going to have, not just like the top 1% of players. I am hearing that they're going to be making Steel Legion a mainstay for the Imperial Officer. That's kind of cool. Steel Legion did need a bit of help, and I was kind of keen to see a few other mainstay options for that character. As for the rest of the faction, we are getting a few new regiments like the Sicarii, which we knew about, the Crusaders, which are brand new. They are my favorite sculpt of the lot. Everything else that's come out, the Crusaders are number 1 on my list of things to get and to paint. I really love the look of them. Can't wait to see what they do. The Archangel, I went on record saying that I wasn't a fan of them adding a monster to 100 Kingdoms, and I'm still not a fan. The miniature itself is good, and most people people are happy with it. I'm glad that they didn't make something completely stupid, like you know, the sort of standard sort of Age of Sigmar style flying angel with wings, Space Marine, Primarch kind of looking character. It's not really like that. It seems a bit more mechanical, seems a little bit more Dark Souls, that kind of thing. So it's a good miniature. I just am not a fan of them making 100 Kingdoms too far into the supernatural. I really like the generic humans feel of the 100 Kingdoms, so for me, that wasn't really my favorite reveal. I do understand that a lot of people really love it, though, so good for them. I'm not hearing too much else. I know that I'll be missing a few things in this video. There's probably more that they said about 100 Kingdoms, but those were my main takeaways. I also didn't get much update come through for Spires or Dwegum. With the Spires, I heard that they're going to be addressing Desolation drones, which I think is important. They need to fix that. Obviously, they're changing Lethal Demise and Aura of Death so that it works a bit differently. I think Lethal Demise doesn't cause morale checks, and Aura of Death is going to be per regiment rather than per stand, which is partly to address Old Dominion, but it will also affect the Spires a little bit, so I hope that they look at some of the weaker Spires regiments and buff those as well. I think they'll be getting a little bit of an overhaul, but probably not to the same extent that Wadroon are, for example. With Dwegum, I heard that they're going to be addressing Thanes. Thanes are a unit you don't really see competitively, so I think that they could really do with a bit of a buff. I'd love to, you know, be able to be a Dweg player that had Thanes available. I have a Dwegum collection, and I would go and buy a unit like Thanes, but they're not that great. I heard something about Hold Warriors as well, which also need to be addressed. Nobody plays Hold Warriors, so it'd be good to see them fixed as well. For Nords and Wadroon, I'm going to spend the majority of this video going through the PDFs, and we'll just talk about some of the changes that are definitely overhauled. For example, I said in my last video that Dwegum are like the Wood Elves of Conquest. They are more about sort of hanging back and playing a guerrilla warfare game and relying on the crutch of the Bowchosen to win, and that's definitely been changed. Bowchosen can't even be taken with the Blooded now. You've got to go Konungur. I don't think they have the same access to those items, which gave them even more damage. So it's going to be a bit of a different story, and they've also gone and buffed Ulfednar and Bearsarks as they needed to. Plus, there's some new regiments coming in, so that's good to see. I think that Nords are a lot more exciting now. Wadroon have been nerfed as they should have been. They were probably the #1 faction along with Old Dominion. Just in a general sort of community sense overall with all levels of the game, Old Dominion were definitely the strongest faction. Wadroon were probably tip top, like for the top 10, like maybe 5% of players, because the leverage you can get from slingers was just too great, along with the triple activation of Chosen and other regiments like that. So they've definitely addressed that. The chant mechanics have been a bit more shall we say, well, I guess the way that they put it is that the chant mechanics themselves are less powerful, but the units have some unique chants that they can do, and they're spreading the power back to the regiments rather than the global centralized, buff system that is applied to the regiments. So I'll talk about that in a bit more detail soon. But Wadroon have been tamed down. They've been put back to a power level that they are supposed to be at, which is something I really appreciate. I think that's a really good thing that they've done. Old Dominion, I hear obviously that they are changing Lethal Demise and Aura of Death, and Leo said that you're not going to be seeing the same style of Praetorian block anymore, thank goodness. The one regiment that I didn't hear him talk about was the Keres. I think that's probably the #1 regiment in the faction that needs to be addressed, because the swing that you can get from the potential rolling sixes from the Insanity attack is just too massive. That unit can either do nothing at all, or it could just completely win the game by deleting a regiment that costs 200 or 300 points just with one spell from a regiment that doesn't cost anywhere near that, and then they can go on to do it onto another regiment next turn. It's just nutty. With the city-states, they are toning down Chariots, which is important. Chariots, one of the most broken regiments in the game up until now. The thing about the Chariots is that you can take 3 of them in a restricted slot, which allows the city-states player, along with a strategic stack, to out-activate you all the time, and that means that they can move in with their chariots once you've run out of activations, and they can pick you off from long range very, very effectively. I heard that they're also changing the damage output a little bit so that one of the mechanics that gives you more damage is only if you're in effective range. There was something around those lines, but we haven't got the exact specifics of it yet. Talos, I think they were going to be nerfing it by putting its points up or reducing one of its abilities. That seems fair. People were really relying on the Talos a lot more than the Hephaestian or the Promethean. And of course, the new regiments are going to be pretty cool. The Clock Lights played against them the other day, and the Sacred Band, which will be an auxiliary unit, as well as a regiment you can normally take. So city-states are feeling like they're going to be one of the top dogs in this next sort of era of the game, in this next meta. And Sorcerer Kings, I heard that they're going to be adjusting I can't remember the regiment ability, but it's something to do with getting more ritual points when you are on objective zones, just things like that, just to make the rituals a bit more effective. I think they're changing the wording of some of the rituals as well, which I think is important. At the moment, Sorcerer Kings has really just been about spamming Jadukavak with ranged sort of fireballs and maximizing conflagrations with your damage spells rather than all of the situational stuff they can do. So game's going in a pretty good direction. I get the feeling they're going to be leaving some of the problematic stuff in the game, stuff that they can't figure out how to solve. But that's fine, so long as they're moving forward and giving us a new meta, which hopefully the power level between the top and the bottom is just a little squished down a bit and a little bit closer together. All right, so let's take the time to go through the PDS we've got for Nords. Again, I'm not going to cover off everything, but just going to point out a few things that are interesting to me. I got the impression that you no longer get +1 attack for having a damaged regiment anymore. I'm not sure what the reason for that was, but I can't see it in there. Just tell me if I've missed something. But you can still charge through hindering without losing inspired, and you take fewer wounds there. When you charge, you count as additional stands. That's kind of nice, but very situational, won't always come up. And then a greater charge distance when you're charging an engaged friendly regiment, as long as you're not a monster. And then +1 resolve, which I think is really nice. That's kind of cool, because what you could do there is, maybe you're charging your Ulfednar against a unit of bone golems, and you're getting a lot of damage done, but you're not wiping them out. And then when they attack you back, you're not going to lose too many troops to the resolve checks that they are going to cause. So that's actually kind of neat. They've got some keywords now, just to set up so that you've got some character abilities which will apply to some types of regiments and not others, so they're splitting them up amongst half-bloods, mortals, etc., etc. I was one of the people that strongly suggested they should update the supremacy abilities for Nords, and they apparently are doing that, so that's great. So the Blooded does seem pretty similar. You get 2 regiments from your auto pick from reinforcements rather than 1, but it can only be one of the half-bloods types of regiments. So that to me seems like one of the weaker ones. There's also the Vargalord ability as well. I think the Vargalord ability previously wasn't different enough from the Blooded, so making it the same ability seems fine, but it's a very weak supremacy in my opinion. It doesn't have enough impact later in the game, and some supremacy abilities do. Jarl, so all friendly mortals gain the benefits of the Warlord's Tribals tactics. I haven't seen the tribal tactics spelt out anywhere. Maybe I'll catch it this time around when I go through the PDF. But the previous Jarl ability was to make all of your light scoring as long as they had a character in them, which was extremely strong, and Opportunist, which was also extremely strong. So more attacks hitting from flanks. It was very powerful, and it does look like they've toned the Jarl's ability down, which is good. The Koninger was previously just terrifying for your regiments, and that was awful. So it's good that they've made that more relevant here. So what does it say? While enemy regiments engaged, friendly regiments add +2 to the charge distance. So getting a bit more speed is a lot more relevant than having terrifying. That's definitely a plus, and you're going to be seeing the Koninger a lot more often because of the Bow Chosen being unlocked by the Koninger. The Volva is a character that I'm probably going to go back to with Nords. Previously, it wasn't used very much because her warband wasn't that great. But getting +1 evasion is still very, very good. And it looks like she's got another ability here. Friendly regiments within range of an objective zone may be the target of a friendly character's spellcasting action, regardless of line of sight. So that's awesome because it's always active. So what you can do is you can use her healing or her blessed or whatever on regiments you can't see that are on the other side of the tabletop. So that's amazing. I expect to see the Shaman and the Volva way more. Wow, okay, so actually, hold on, that's for the Shaman and the Volva? All right, so that means the Shaman's no longer able to give you Vanguard in this faction. That's interesting. Okay. So, wow, so they're sharing the same one. I didn't really realize that until just now. Fair enough. Okay, so the Blooded still relatively similar, but as you can see, the restricted units, you've got Golter Beast Pack instead of Bow Chosen, so that's a bit different. That's going to nerf Nords a little bit, but there's plenty of other things that they can do now. Looking at the Jarl, again, you've got these character upgrades here. I'm going to have to find out where these rules are written down. They might not be available until the army update later this week. But I assume that they're reasonably strong, and when it says take the flanks, draw them in, etc., I'm sure one of them is going to be something like opportunists or related to that. So that's good, and obviously the Jarl allows you to take Ulfednar as your mainstays, and Ulfednar are a lot better now, so you might see that kind of set up. Bearsarks are still chosen as well, and the Sea Jotnar is still very, very good, so I think the Jarl will definitely see a lot of play. Koninger allows Bowchosen as mainstays, so I think you'll definitely see the Koninger in a bunch of lists. If I was going to be playing Nords right now, based on my current understanding of the faction, I would definitely run a Koninger. I think probably the setup I would take would be one Koninger and one Volva or Shaman, based on what I'm seeing here. So that's really cool. Steel Chosen obviously used to be two different regiments, Blade Chosen and Steel Chosen, so they've just grouped it down to one regiment and reworked that. So the Shaman, I think that some of the abilities have changed here. We're going to have a reread of those, but what I was seeing from Discord is that some of them have been modified. Mainstay only Raiders. Okay, so they've taken out the White Waste Shaman regiment. I assume that's going to be coming back, but for now, Raiders only. I do hope they eventually come out with that regiment, though, because it seemed cool, like having a really cheap sort of, beyond the wall kind of regiment. And then the Volva, still restricted to Valkyries, Huskarls, and Raiders, but she does have a much better supremacy now. I do like the Volva in this situation because her supremacy is going to be a lot more relevant, and her spell list is very, very good. Vargalord, I think the difference now with the Vargalord is you can take Golter Beast Pack. You're not just stuck with Werewolves and Fenner Beast Pack. And the reason why you didn't really see the Vargalord previously is that the warband was quite weak. And even though you sort of had a very good early game, it's not like you could just charge across the table and slam into some other light regiment, because your opponent can then bring stuff onto the board next to your Vargalord's unit and outclass it and beat it, or just shoot at it. And the regeneration just wasn't really enough, because your stuff dies too easily, like they're quite flimsy. But the opportunity to take Golter Beast Pack opens up the strategy a little bit more, so I think that we might see a little bit more relevance from that character. I'm not that attracted to him, but, you might like him. And then, of course, the new guy, the Jotnar Cider, very expensive. Obviously, it is a very powerful regiment. I just don't know if it's worth the points yet. Honestly, I don't know. Like, we have to play test this. I really can't tell you whether this is going to be overpowered or underpowered or what. It's the kind of regiment you want to take along with a bunch of other Jotnars, so you could take this as a character. It can't be the Warlord, by the way. So you take this as a character, and then you take maybe one Jotnar, Mounted Jotnar, and one Sea Jotnar, or one Ice Jotnar. If you want to take 5 Giants, you could. I just feel like maybe that is too many. But, I haven't really playtested it, and I don't really know what kinds of builds are supposed to really counter it, so maybe it is really strong. I just haven't played enough games with it. That's probably something I'll be keen to test, though. You got 2 weapon choices, which are kind of cool. So you either insta-kill an objective marker or you get unyielding. I would always take the unyielding guy because killing objective markers is generally something you do when you're winning. Like, it's a win more kind of mechanic, whereas unyielding is the kind of thing that can clutch a game where it's going to be a draw, but you get the win by having that ability, or you're barely losing and you flip it to a win thanks to your opponent not being able to score. Because this guy's so tough, You know, you got hard on 1, 20 wounds there, defense 3, resolve 4. That's pretty decent. Then, and fearless, mind you, then having unyielding's pretty good. I did notice they changed their magic items around a little bit. There's a few things missing, I think, but generally it's still a pretty good list of items. Calls of the Serpent still pretty nice for something like trolls, and obviously the Volva with evasion from and the Shaman from the Supremacy as well. Figurehead of the Nagelfar works slightly differently. You got Tenacious up to 3 instead of them re-rolling the hits or whatever the case was for the previous one. Still decent on a early game unit of Bow Chosen. So if your Konig is going in a unit of Bow Chosen with the Figurehead, that works. A few little good bits and pieces here. I think the Redbringer, they took out Bloodlust, by the way, so that's one big change with this edition, is that previously Bloodlust was a liability, preventing you from controlling your units in some cases, and it did have the advantage of allowing you to charge on the turn that you come on the table. So Nords can't really do that anymore, which is a bit of a nerf, but it was always a little bit situational anyway. Like, I think a really good opponent could stop you from really getting the most out of that, so I don't think we'll miss it too much. So hopefully they change duels a little bit as well, otherwise some of these weapons aren't going to see that much use, but that might be on the cards as well. What was the other one I saw here that I liked the look of? Pack Tactics is kind of interesting because losing the irregular special rule means that you go with Fenner, which I believe are irregular, and they can become the type of unit which can increase your reinforcement line. So that's something that's kind of interesting. Now the spells, I haven't looked very deeply into these, but I think Hoarfrost got changed, so that's one hit per success with the armor piercing special rule. That used to have bonus hits if you're in combat, so I think the idea is that because they've changed Ulfednar and Bearsarks a little bit, being able to get straight into combat with them and cast Hoarfrost has been toned down a little bit. The main thing I wanted to point out with Ulfednar and Bearsarks, by the way, is that there is this upgrade you can have for them called a Savage. I'll just see if I can find it. So we're just going to scroll past the items here. So Raiders haven't changed all that much. Bow Chosen haven't changed all that much. They still have Precise Shot, yep. Stalkers still haven't changed that much, although... they've got Opportunists naturally, which is kind of cool, so they don't need it from the Jarl, which is nice. Werewolves haven't changed too much. Obviously, the nature of the warband and the character has changed a little bit. Huskarls are still reasonably good. Trolls, obviously, if you put the Blooded in them and give them a bit more evasion, I think that they can still be pretty powerful. And as minimum small units, so long as you're getting a good supremacy ability buff them, I still think they're great. Now, the Ulfednar can take a Savage or Shieldbiter, and the Savage for 30 points gives you a free charge. So that's very, very powerful. They're almost like these guys are the new Chosen of Conquest, because you can march 6 inches, charge 6 plus d6, and then clash, which means that they're going to out-threat a lot of other infantry units. And because they do so much damage, that suddenly makes them scary, and you can have a character in there which might be inflicting even more stuff. So that is good. I mean, that makes these guys a bit more of the focus of the faction, which is great. When I think of Nords, I typically think of the Vikings with their ferocious, offensive play, axes and swords. And if you come down to the Bearsarks, they can also take a Savage, so same kind of thing. These guys are only Clash 5, but they are Cleave 2, so that is a big buff. They have got Vanguard base. They are heavy, but on turn 3, you bring one of these guys on, march them up, 18 inches. Their characters no longer have a movement speed anymore, so they don't slow them down. And then maybe as early as turn 2, you are doing the march, charge, and clash. You can also do a reform charge clash as well. So this unit is no longer affected by Bloodlust. These guys are excellent now, in my opinion. So I'm looking forward to seeing them on the battlefield a lot. And this makes Nords a much more offensive faction than they were, and a much more close combat-oriented faction than they were before, which is awesome. Speaking of offensive and close combat, we've got Steel Chosen now, which differ from Ulfednar and Bearsarks. They're not like a similar unit because these guys don't have the Savage, but they are a bit tougher at wounds 5. And they also have Linebreaker, which is not something you see. Oh, actually, I think the Bearsarks do have it, don't they? No, they've lost Linebreaker. Okay, I thought they used to have Linebreaker. So that's gone over to the Steel Chosen, I guess, to spread out their abilities a bit more. And stands in this regiment gain the benefits of the tribal tactics. The character stand whose warband they're part of selected. Great. I still want to read what the tribal tactics do. And they have a bunch of attacks there and good clash. A bit weak on the resolve and defense side, but I think there's probably stuff that you can do about that with the Volva spells and the possibly supremacy ability and possibly the character's item lineup. So, and the miniatures for these look really, really good, by the way. So, Gold to Beast Pack, these guys are new. They're the big boars, the armored pigs. So let's have a read of them. Brutal Impact 1, good. Impact 3, that's good. Clash 3, that's good when you've got Impact 3. I think these guys have been reworked. I remember them having Shock. Also, Speed 6 for Cavalry is not really the best. So these guys seem like they're reasonably decent at close combat and charging. I think for them to really shine, they seem like they're going to need some support from the Vargalord. Or maybe the Blooded. Yeah, I mean, they don't cost much more than Household Knights do, but Household Knights are Defense 4 rather than Defense 3, and Household Knights have a longer charge distance and have more impact hits, although they're only Clash 2, to be fair. So I think Household Knights in the Noble Lords Warband have slightly better performance than a unit of Gold to Beast Pack. The Golters only wounds 4, resolve 3, not great. I guess the main difference is that you can buff them with different types of supremacy abilities, so you can get up to evasion 2, which is very, very useful. And I think these guys can be joined by the Vargalord, who can take gear that will help them out a fair bit. Linebreaker is also really nice as well. So, for example, if you get your Household Knights into combat, they then become Clash 2 with no other benefits, whereas these guys break through shields at that point with Clash 3, which is not bad. They are irregular, which is a bit of a pain. But again, there is that pack mentality kind of upgrade, which takes that away. So I think that this is probably going to be a decent pick along with the Vargalord. That way you can move through, you can score, and he's got a reasonably solid unit for close combat. And of course, even if this regiment isn't putting out that much damage, the Vargalord himself obviously will. So C Jotnar still has Fiend Hunter, probably one of the better Jotnars. And of course you can access them very easily with your new Cider character Jotnar, so that's fun. And Mountain Jotnar, I still like him. Some people think that he's a bit expensive, but I still think he's okay. Wounds 18, obviously got buffed, not this time around, but the previous time around. Ice Jotnar, very, very expensive, but it's quite hard to get to Cleave 3, so if you are in a meta where you need to cut through a lot of armor, that could be a pretty good one. And this sort of just goes into explaining the updates, with Savage being obviously the really important one there. Cool. Oh, here's the tribal tactics. Here we go. Okay. So Direct Assault counts as heavy for the purposes of inflicting wounds to objective markers. That's not huge. I mean, it's nice, but I don't think that is really game-breaking. Draw them in is opportunist. Okay, so that's a good one. That's reroll attacks when you attacking from the flank, which is massive, and then take the flanks. If you are in the flank or the rear, the enemy doesn't count towards seizing. Well, if you get them in the flank or the rear, you're probably winning, and you're probably going to be beating them that way. So I don't think that's as crucial. I think draw them in is clearly the winner there. So having opportunists on more stuff is probably what I would be taking personally. Cool. Let's take the time to go through Wadroon, which is a faction I'm a bit more familiar with. Okay, so let's come down here. So chanting is different. So one important thing is that when you reach the maximum of 3, you don't have to chant. So it's like having a drum beast. Drum beast does something a bit different now. So you don't have to burn through the tokens when you make it to tier 3, which is really good, which allows you to be a bit more strategic about like just floating the tokens. So you can exchange any number of markers for an equal number of famine, death, or war markers in any combination, and then you choose the cult. Great. Bonus the tier's cumulative. And then remove any chant markers from the sequence after you chant, of course, if you use the buff. And they perform separately. Great. Here we are. So as we talked about, there's no longer a tier 3, and the actual benefits you get from this battlecry table are much weaker. So for Famine, you've got to get to 3 markers to get +2 charge distance. You don't get Shock. There's no more Glorious Charge. There's no more Relentless Blows. All of these battle cries at tier 1 give you a bonus stand for purposes of seizing. That's interesting because you can now do, for example, an army that has like 8 Raptor Riders and 4 Quattles or something like that, and they can chant enough that your light regiments can start scoring in some cases, which might be the way to skew them now. I'm probably going to be building some lists like that next week to see if that's possible, given that you don't need to take mediums or heavies to score. You can rely on the battle cry table, so like every second regiment per turn can build up 2 markers and go onto the zone, and of course if you've got a character plus a regiment, they can always score, is the way I'm reading it. So Famine for +2 charge distance. Again, bear in mind that if you're going to be going for like a hard out Thunder Riders build, they may want Famine because nothing else on this list is really going to be that useful. And charge distance is very, very good when you've got a really crushing unit of Thunder Riders, and there are other ways to buff them, as we're going to see. Death is for Untouchable. Again, a bit disappointing. I thought Death was really like the killing things kind of one, so I felt like tier 2 probably should be +1 clash, but it's become the defensive one, and now War is the killing one with Cleave, so they've swapped it around. But you can't get Blessed, you can't get +1 defense, and Wadroon really is nerfed by that, but they are being buffed in other areas, and they needed the nerf, quite frankly. I mean, I think it was unfair that Wadroon could have, for example, 5 Braves and the Queen with Tenacious and Indomitable, and basically be defense 4 with Blessed, and you can pretty much do that every turn. So it was like having a unit of Ashen Dawn, basically, along with Counterattack and Cleave and Fearless and blah, 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 blah. So Conquest is a bit different because you don't get the scoring the benefit, but you do get the +2 march characteristic. So I think it's still going to be worthwhile having Slingers with Conquest because really the thing is the threat range. So you go 8 inches and you do your volley, and that's how you're going to do it. And of course Slingers can now get torrential fire right up to their total range, which is kind of nutty, but they're not what they were before, so that's important. And evasion from tier 3, so that's interesting. Okay, so characters can have the cults that we had before, makes sense. We got Matriarch Queen. So whenever you chant, it loses broken, great, and once per game you get +2 stands for seizing. So the Queen was previously able to give out Fanatic, which was probably the thing that made her the best warlord. So nerfing that's fine, but this does seem like a weak source ability. Chieftain, okay, so got Crushing Force. I'm going to have to read up on what Crushing Force does, but it covers the entire battlefield. I assume it's a bit like Shock, but we'll read about what that does. And Tempo now affects all friendly tribes in the army. Great. Thunder Chieftain. So that's giving you Shock, so similar to before, probably a little bit different. And then Predator. When an enemy regiment is destroyed, add a chant marker to the sequence. If it was in range of objective zone, gain 2. So that could be kind of cool, especially if you're building like lots of lights and you want more markers for scoring. So it seems okay, although I'm still leaning towards the Thunder Chiefs one. And then the Sign of Conquest. This basically allows you to search your command stack and play whatever you want. I can see how that would be powerful, but I can also see a lot of situations where it won't make that much difference, to be fair. So that's something I'd have to play test, but I've never been in a game where I really feel like I wanted to pick one of my cards which was due to activate later and bring it forward. That doesn't happen to me very often. Okay, so the Queen can still heal, can't heal monsters, but can heal regiments. That's great. That still makes her very powerful. And she gets Stoic automatically. And at 100 points, this makes her really, really good. So I think the Queen's going to be a great pick. Still has similar kind of warband by the looks. The Chieftain. Okay, so when a friendly regiment chants the battle cry against Impact +2, This is the foot chief, by the way. So if you're in a big unit of veterans, blooded or braves, that's kind of handy. And of course, you can get a bit more speed with the chant ability from famine or conquest. Not that much more, but a little bit. It certainly helps. And friendly infantry get Vanguard if they're in the tribes group. Looks good. Okay, Thunder Chieftain, one of my faves. He's got Trample 2, great. Brutal Impact 2. Impact 4, awesome. And Thunder Riders still get flank. Okay, cool. So I'm probably still going to be playing my favorite build, which has just the one Thunder Chieftain and the 3 Thunder Riders, and trying to get the most out of him with Famine. That seems like a good way to go. You don't need to take Mandal the Devoter with him anymore, obviously. You can take some other item. I think there's an item which gives you more impact hits, so that's probably the one we're going for. Predator, so forward force, yep, still there. Fire in advance automatically. They are taking away animalistic focus, which I think was the one that a lot of people preferred because you could just shoot through forests. I think it's great that they've got rid of that because it was a really negative play experience being up against a Wadroon player that could just hunt you through forests, and there's nothing you can do to stop their slingers from just wiping you out. So that's a good change. Mounted Predator. I love the miniature for the new Mounted Predator, by the way. Really awesome looking. So what have we got here? Effects, ignores hindering, blah, blah, blah. It's great. And attack 6 for the Mounted Predator. It used to be only 5, so I'm glad they brought it in line with the foot guy. Then you've got the brand new Winglord Predator. What they did is they were teasing the rules for the Quattle, and there was this airborne mechanic where it doesn't actually touch the ground and you just displace the unit whenever something moves into contact with it. And they couldn't get that to work, understandably, and they admitted defeat and they came back to the basic counting as just a land regiment way of doing it, which I totally agree with. So you've got a few things you can do with this guy. I'm not going to pretend to know whether this is going to be powerful or not. I'll definitely be trying them out. But it's fun that you can have a warlord that goes on top of the Quattle. So we'll learn a bit more about the Quattle in due time. So Sign of Conquest, he can take the Chosen of Conquest as default and all of the other ones as restricted still. Let's go through here. Artifacts, War of the Tribe. Okay, whenever it chants, it counts as tier 2 and gains Blessed. Wow. Okay, so that's how you still get the Braves going with the Queen. Although bear in mind you're not getting +1 defense, so that has been nerfed. But Roar of the Tribe is very good because it says Blessed until the end of the round, and that's for all of them, and it's only infantry. So I think that being able to do that with the Chief or the Queen is really, really good. So that's a great item right there. Blessed is very, very strong. Okay, Scars of Endikar, terrifying, not that interesting to me. Death's Gaze gains Impact 3. Now that is not Impact +3, it is just Impact 3. So you're not going to get Impact 3 +2, for example. So I think that's okay, but Impact 3 is not really that crazy. I mean, you've got, if you have a big unit of something like 6 Braves plus the character, they are going to have a bunch of impact hits, but they're going to miss most of them, and you're not going to have Brutal Impact, and you're probably not going to have Shock. So, yeah, it's not game-breaking, and it's not much more powerful than the previous Death's Gaze was. Horn of Ronan, when the Cavalry Regiment chants Cult of War at Tier 2, gain Trample +2. Okay, so that is not Impact +2, it's Trample +2. So that is where you have a lot of Thunder Riders and you want to go from Trample 2 to Trample 4, which is decent, but Trample doesn't have any Brutal Impact or anything like that. So that's something I might consider if I was running a very big unit of Thunder Riders. Like, if it was 4 or 5 Thunder Riders plus the Chief, this item probably would be useful. And again, we're going War here, which just gives you Cleave rather than the +2 speed. So I think I'd be unlikely to build that. Alright, so Beads of Death is still there. That's still a great ability. Tenacious is excellent. Opportunist, that's really cool. That is something I'd definitely use for something like Raptor Riders, because they've got Liquid Formation. Death's Reach, okay, not bad. Brute of Omgora, okay, that's actually quite cool because it still allows you to put your Thunder Rider, sorry, your Chief on a mounted unit, by the way, so that might be something to explore. Kiss of the Dinosaur must reroll successful defense and morale test rolls. So that's still brutal. This is an item I'd definitely put on any sort of flying unit, like the mounted predator on the quattle, or the foot predator with marksmanship and doing a lot of damage in a slinger's unit. This is so good, and it's even better if you happen to have deadly shot. I don't know if he's still got deadly shot. Let me just check that. So Predator, yes, he still has armor-piercing deadly shot, and he's barrage 4 now. That's crazy. Okay, so I assume you can't take marksmanship anymore. So I think having Kiss of the Dinosaur on your foot predator is insane. Tribal Spear hasn't changed that much. Oh, it's within range of an objective. It's +1 attack. That used to be to do with chant markers, as far as I recall. Okay, Teachings of Conquest, forward force. All right, that's not huge. Friendly objective marker within 6 is immediately destroyed. Okay. Drive, gain Cult of Famine. Unsung. Okay. Cool stuff here. So avoids being broken. Thunder Riders get hardened. Okay, so that's cool. That's and it's all Thunder Riders. That's insane. So I guess if you're making a build where you're taking 2 units of Thunder Riders, that's going to be a must. And bear in mind, they can't have +1 defense anymore from War Cult. So Blood, +1 evasion up to maximum of 3. That's something which is quite cool. I don't know if you can stack that with what the Death Ladies are doing from the Chosen of Death. It says maximum of 3. Here's a way of getting Deadly Blades. You could previously get that with Death Cult, and now this is a way of doing it for an extra 15 points. Ways of the Speakers. Monster regiments become better reinforcements. Great. Apex Master, we know what that does. Taunter Rider, we know what that does. Drum Beast, fair enough. And greater range for the Drum Beast, that's nice. And let's see if these... Okay, so this is different. Cacophony used to do something else. Now it's just like a direct damage spell, so that's different. I guess they're making it a bit more boring. But the previous Cacophony was potentially quite game-breaking. Crescendo, that looks similar. Dissonance, that used to be different as well. So this is stopping them from getting inspired. Discordance is the really key one, which was very powerful, stopping enemy regiments from seizing zones. That is huge. That's still there. And Resonance gives them decay. I don't think that's absolutely massive. Discordance is really the huge one, but there are going to be some situations where Cacophony is the only thing that's really going to be relevant, and being able to get some hits off is good. And Attunement 4 is quite high. So being able to blast them with that is actually pretty neat. All right, Braves, they don't look terribly different. Correct me if I'm wrong. Blooded, yep, still attack 6, 40 points per additional stand. Aberration, not too sure what that's going to do now that... I assume it's still Lethal Demise, but Lethal Demise is changing a little bit. Veterans, I don't know if they automatically get Flurry anymore, but they do get other benefits from the Foot Chief. Hunters, Loose Formation still, Barrage 4, 14 up and Piercing Deadly Shot. Yep, that's still pretty good. Slingers, although I don't think that item that gives them Torrential Fire is going to be in the list anymore. I didn't see that. So Slingers used to be Barrage 4, they're down to Barrage 3, still range 18 and Torrential Fire. So when they chant the Battle Cry, they are going to get Torrential Fire for their entire barrage range. So that means that instead of going like 13 shots and hitting half of them, so instead of getting 6 to 7 hits, you are going to be firing 10 times, hitting half of them, and then adding, another 2.5 hits. So it's similar to what it was before. But I think the nerf here is that when you do get within effective range, you're going to be Torrential Fire at Barrage 3, rather than Torrential Fire at Barrage 4. So they have been nerfed a little bit, and they can't shoot through forests anymore, and they can't get the insane threat range that they could have previously with Tier 3 Conquest from the previous edition. Chosen of Conquest cannot get the triple activation anymore, so that is a nerf. They still have... Oh, actually, no, they're down to 6 wounds, down from 7. This unit has been nerfed significantly, but they were crazy. They were absolutely busted before, so I'm kind of relieved to see that. Chosen of Death, they work a bit differently now, so let's see what they can do. They add +1 to their evasion when they chant the battle cry, so they go up to 3. That's still pretty good. Bear in mind that this is a regiment with flawless strikes and flurry, but no cleave, so they're not going to absolutely trash a heavily armored unit. But they will definitely do some work. They also used to be like attacks 8 from what I could remember. I don't think it was 6. I think it was higher than that. So interesting unit. They do seem like they're going to be a bit flimsy if you attack them before they activate. So evasion 2 and resolve 3, they're going to be a little bit weak against a lot of shooting and just a lot of like terrifying units that are attacking them, like Old Dominion, if they don't get the first hit off. So I'm not sold on them yet. Like they are quite expensive, so I just don't know. There might be some really good combination that you can play with them. Like maybe the Scion with Beads of Death, for example, and obviously the spells could be good in them. Chosen of Famine, let's have a look. So when they chant, they also get Terrifying. That's not always that great. They get Naturally Cleave 1, and it says Preview here. I can't see a points cost, so the verdict is out until we know what they're going to cost. Warbred, on paper, they were going to be absolutely nutty because they were going to be defense 5 with like Blessed and stuff like that, but obviously that has been nerfed. So this is a unit that could be normal on release. Charge distance is always March 5. That's kind of cool. So your threat range is going to be 11 at all times, and with Impact 2, Cleave 2, that's not bad. And for their points, I think that they are fine. So that's quite an exciting one. Sorry, this is Warbred. This is not even Chosen of War. Okay, so Chosen of War is still in the works. These are just your normal brutes. Okay, my bad. All right, so they've been reworked a bit, and I think that's good because most people do have a regiment of Warbred in their collection, and we weren't really seeing much value from them previously. Hunting Pack still have the cool special rules. The Speed 8, Fluid Formation, regular Opportunist, Vanguard, Loose Formation. Still really, really good. I mean, turn 1, you move on 24 inches, and the ability to harass your opponent in turn 2 and 3 is absolutely massive, so I still would recommend taking a couple of regiments of those. Raptor Riders, after talking to Benjamin Lin, we realized how broken they were, and looking at them now, they are not able to just scream across the battlefield with all of the buffs from the old Supremacy. Their threat range is a little bit more limited, but you do get a free volley action, so you can still take a regiment of 4 or 5 and get the Fluid Formation, move around, and then get the long charge, and Famine is still going to give you +2 on the charge range, isn't it? And then you get a free volley, so their damage output is a bit more now, thanks to that. But their threat range isn't, that massive potential it was before. Having said that, they can score now. So probably the very first list that I'll be trying out is Mass Thunder Riders and maybe one unit of, Mass Raptor Riders, maybe one unit of Thunder Riders, and maybe a couple of Quattles, and we'll see how that goes. Thunder Riders, they look like they are similarly costed and similar stats from what I'm seeing there. Oh, base defense 4. Wow, that's helpful. That's helpful. And being an impact 4, you can't increase that, but you can go trample 4. Okay, all right. So I think what I'm seeing here is that I want to take a Thunder Chief with Thunder Riders and then a bunch of Raptor Riders is probably my thinking. Chosen of War, okay, here they are. They are defense 3 with shield, and they don't get Blessed, and they don't get +1 defense. That is fine. They seem a lot more sensible now, and gaining Cleave +1 to go up to Cleave 2 if they are chanting, that seems fine to me. Yeah, I think that's a reasonably balanced unit. Apex Predator, still movement 8, still class 3, attacks 11, wounds 15, resolve 4. Still seems good. I don't think they've messed around with him very much. I think he's gone up by 10 points, has he? Or was he always 190? I think he was 180 before. I can't quite remember, but anyway, still a really good monster. Just an iconic regiment from Conquest. Tontor, 330, similar stats from what I'm seeing there. Yeah, Tontor is always a lot of fun. Dominating Presence, okay. Discard 3 chant markers of any cult, and he becomes +2 stands, great, okay. And he ignores the effects of special abilities, which becomes less stands, great. And his march distance can't be negatively affected by special rules, good. Okay, so I think he's fine. Tontor wasn't the best thing in the faction before, and he's not now, and he's not completely oppressive, but he's still really good. So happy to see that. Now the Quattle, this is new. So what do you do with a Quattle? It's a medium monster, and it's movement 9. All right, it's a regular, so you're not going to see it getting much chanting done. Barrage 5, well, it's only 1 stand, mind you. and it gets a free volley, so it's going to inflict like a couple of wounds a turn, 1 or 2 wounds really. And in terms of fighting, 9 attacks cleave 2, 9 attacks clash 2 is not much, and it's very flimsy. Inflicts 5 hits by marching over a size 1, okay. And then brutal impact from a charge to the enemy's flank or rear, okay. Can it score? It's a monster, so I believe it can. If it can, then that's very, very powerful. If it can't, I don't know if I want to spend that many points on it. Maybe 1 quaddle is okay for harassment, but multiple quaddles, I'm not sure. But if it can score, which I assume that it can, unless they're changing the rules around, because monsters count as scoring, then yeah. Drumbeast, okay, this is new. Primal Cacophony. By discarding 3 chart markers, enemy regiments within 10 must use the lowest resolve characters. Okay, so it does nothing against Old Dominion. But if you are up against a faction where you've got a Resolve 4 character in a Resolve 2 regiment, that can be quite powerful. So that would really ruin somebody's day if they're playing like a really big unit with, I don't know, Hold Rag with in Ballistae or Hold Warriors or something, and you come in with this guy. That's actually very, very helpful. Does he have Terrifying? Not really. And he's cheaper than the Tontor, but again, the damage output compared to the Tontor, just not the same. You got 16 attacks and Relentless Blows over here, whereas no Relentless Blows and just 12 attacks. So the Tontor is probably still the way to go, sadly. Aberration, oh, that doesn't do lethal demise anymore? Okay, 1 additional chart marker. Not, doesn't seem like it'd be worth it, really. Cool, okay, well that was a fun little review of some of the new rules. Very excited to play the new Wadroon when they come out next week, and I'm just happy that we're seeing some nerfs to some of the main things out there. Can't wait to see what they do with Keres, but overall I'm assuming that Old Dominion aren't going to be massively oppressive, and from the looks of Wadroon, they are clearly not going to be the overpowered super faction they once were with the triple activating slingers, but they still have some good things going for them. I personally will be opting for the cavalry style list, mainly Raptor Riders and mainly Thunder Riders, but I'll get around to trying the other stuff. Wadroon is the main faction I play on Tabletop Simulator. In person, in my local community, I obviously play 100 Kingdoms and a little bit of Duegum. I am excited to see what Crusaders do and what the Theist rework will be. We can hopefully get away from playing Cavalry every single game, although I don't want Cavalry to be completely sidelined. I'd like to see the viability there to play Cavalry or a hybrid list or just Infantry. That is, I think, should be a design goal for them. They should make that possible. So, feeling optimistic, guys. Feeling happy to be a Conquest player, and hopefully have some more content for you soon. But in the meantime, you have a great day.